Before we go into the formal adoption presentation, I do want to share a few words with everyone that has been gracious enough to be here tonight. So over the last several days, we've received many emails in addition to feedback that we received from Monday's meeting, in addition to feedback from exit polls and community surveys. The first thing I would like for everyone to hear is that all of those pieces of information and feedback were read, they were accounted for, and I want to thank our Board of Ed primarily, and especially our President, Kim McCluskey, and Vice President, Amy Thomas, for doing much of the replying. We looked at everything very carefully and we're listening. I also want you to know that we hear you and we understand the situation as presented. It's also important, I think, for all of us to hear that as we receive feedback, the feedback often was from opposing views, if that makes sense. So I'm asking for your willingness, no matter the direction or the decision, to commit to unifying our district as we make decisions moving forward. Pittsford hallmark, our hallmark, is certainly in collaboration. It's something we want to continue and get better in. And it's been never more important than it is today. The future of Pittsford Central School District is strong, and we will remain among the best in the nation. And we certainly can do all of this while coming together as a community, starting now. Various New York State laws, I think, are important for all of us to understand the implications and the role these things have with what we do. They make our budgeting and decisions surrounding budgets very difficult. The tax cap and the laws surrounding the tax cap absolutely punish school districts like Pittsford for adding any type of new initiatives, no matter how important they are. If a district like ours makes a decision to go forward with a new program and it requires us to exceed the tax cap, we're punished by having rebate checks withheld from community members. We are now held back from making major programmatic improvements because of the arbitrarily announced supermajority of 60%. And for us, we had the majority, but not the supermajority. Our school district is further held back because New York State has frozen aid across the state, but for us it's particularly hurtful. Since 2008, I will say to you that we have absolutely been entitled to and not have received tens of millions of dollars. Additionally, the frozen aid since 2008 has implications that would only allow us to receive half-time reimbursement on a full-day kindergarten program. On top of all of that, we have the normal things that we contend with as we budget from year to year. Not getting any advance notice of aid and not getting any advance notice of what our cap would be. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. Having set the background of the environment that we're working in, I just want to give you an update of where we are today and then where we are moving forward, and then I'm going to go into the presentation. Since the start of the budget process in September, and that's when we begin looking at what the budget is going to look like, and we start getting hints from what's happening in Albany and what the state, the cap will be. But since then, we've made over $3 million in reductions to our current budget, to this year's budget. And that includes staffing due to enrollment and course selections. It includes clerical support, teachers, paraprofessionals, athletics, travel and conference, and other areas. I share that with you because I don't want anyone to think as you leave here that we're not making cuts all the time. So we definitely have $3 million of reductions that allowed us to get to the 4.7. Because last year's tax levy was 0.58, so the levy on the community was about 0.5%, we felt that the community would support a higher levy than normal this year. We thought that the budget that we put together this year contained the best of both worlds, as it allowed us to not cut program, and at the same time it allowed full day K to be on the docket. 3 years prior to even this year's budget, knowing that full day K would be costly but very valuable, we were very thorough in our study and then in presenting the findings by holding forums, creating video, creating commonly asked question sheets, visiting senior centers, and a lot more. We did this work because we're passionate about full day K. The board believes so strongly in full day kindergarten that they did not want it as a separate referendum. Rather, the proposed budget has full day K embedded within it. A week ago, we had nearly 7,000 voters come out with a 53.5% yes vote support of the budget. While in pre-tax cap law years, this would have been enough to pass. The law now requires a 60% supermajority, as you know, causing our budget to be voted down. This was among the highest voter turnouts in history, in our history. After the vote did not pass, we received feedback that suggested that we should make program cuts to allow full day K to stay in the budget and be within the tax cap. It's important to note that since the inception of pursuing full day K, we heard the opposite at the very, very beginning stages of rolling out full day K. We heard clearly from those without preschool age children that they would not support full day K if it meant cutting any opportunities from other students. Moving forward, we agreed that all of our programs were important and that we would not introduce full day K by eliminating opportunities for other students. Programs should not be in competition, as our current programs have yielded tremendous success across the board. The Board of Education agreed during one of our first full day K workshops that we simply cannot sacrifice existing programs and other activities in order to accommodate full day K. Further, we opposed the idea of putting full day K up as a referendum. Because we are truly one Pittsford, one community, we chose to stand together proposing one unified budget plan, not one for full day K supporters and another one for everyone else. In order to keep full day kindergarten in the budget and stay under the tax cap, we needed to either reduce or cut a large number of programs, including extracurricular and electives, all of which we promised that we would not do at the very onset of the full day K study. In the event that the second budget does not pass, we will need to go to a New York State imposed contingent budget. So just to be clear, we are on our second budget now, and then if this does not pass, we go to contingent. Following the contingency law, we would need to make $6.8 million in reductions, and that number is based on what was proposed in our last vote. It's a number that's truly hard to quantify. Factually speaking, these cuts would be devastating to our community, our students, our staff. Additionally, it would take us years to recover, taking the conversation about full day K away for the foreseeable future. The magnitude of these cuts would involve some of the following. We would have to eliminate full day K without the ability to return to that conversation for many years to come. We would have limitations and restrictions to our facility use for the community. We'd either have to increase fees for all parties or make a decision to discontinue use altogether. This is a decision that the board would make after the vote. We'd have to close another pool. We'd have reductions and eliminations in the following areas: extracurricular clubs, athletics, music, art, business, technology, APs, professional development, field trips, security guards, administrative costs, supplemental reading, writing, math supports, gifted and talented programs, school nurse teachers, multiple teacher and paraprofessional cuts, and more. All stakeholder groups would be adversely impacted. I think that part's extremely important. It's when you try to quantify $6.5 million of cuts, they're across the board. This next budget is a high stakes budget that would be catastrophic to program now and well into the future, should it not pass. Given the gravity of this, I am proposing tonight a budget that keeps Pittsford within the tax cap and maintains current programs. This does not include the implementation of full day K this year. I want to speak from my heart here and tell you that I know, those of you that are here and who have championed full day K, how disappointing this is to you. Forever, we have studied full day K and have never brought it to a vote. So I want to thank our parents who have been advocating for it. I want to thank our board for having the courage to put it to vote. And I want to thank everyone who's worked so hard to date to create such robust data relative to the importance of full day K. I'm asking for those full day K supporters that are here and beyond that you move forward with us and join us so we can get the funding that's necessary to implement full day K in the nearest timeline possible. There is momentum to do this work. We have a commitment from legislators to make this a priority. We have a contribution already of $200,000 from Senator Funke against equipment necessary for full day K, reducing the immediate cost. I want to share a paragraph that I read on Monday night from the Senator's office. I'm also proud to co-sponsor Bill 5-700, along with Senator Carlucci, to provide enhanced transition aid to allow Pittsford and a handful of other districts that currently have half-day kindergarten to move towards a full-day model. This bill has a $37 million fiscal attached to it. So it will likely need to be pushed during the 2018-19 budget process coming up. With your help, I would like to organize and meet to advocate for this funding. I would like to organize and meet to get this bill passed. You have my pledge. You also have the pledge of the Board of Education that we will work together. We will include legislators in town meeting and create a strong and organized advocacy group that in the future provides an environment that makes implementing full day K and maintaining program and excellence in a fair and equitable manner and making that all a reality. And also doing it in a way that no longer further burdens our taxpayers. I started as a superintendent because I love kids. I love working with kids. I would do anything in the world for children. I think there's a lot of people that can give examples. When something's wrong with a student, I want to fix it. Our students deserve full day K and I want to fix it. You deserve full day K and I want to fix it. The board understands the importance of full day K and they want to fix it. So I ask that you work with us, that we work together and do our darndest to get full day K into swing as soon as possible. Thank you. We're going to transition now actually into the formal portion, which is the budget adoption presentation. And then we will, the board will have discussion relative to what's being presented, and that will be followed by public comment and then adjournment. So the purpose of the budget adoption, we went through this once before prior to our other budget, is to present my budget and recommend it to the Board of Education to then have them consider this their budget. What I'm asking the Board of Education to do and take action on is to approve and adopt the total spending plan, acknowledge and approve that the spending plan will not require a property tax cap override, and approve the New York State property tax report card. You've seen this many a times. If you've gone to our board workshops, you've seen this every time we've done a workshop. Our goal is to create a student-based budget, something where we provide experiences, both curricular and extracurricular, that supports the varied interests of the whole child, something that allows our students to maintain a rigorous and engaging experience at school, something that allows us to continue with a high-quality professional development for our staff so that our kids will feel that in the classroom, and do so while managing the impact of investment with sensitivity to the limited community resources. That part is certainly highlighted tonight with the new budget. And to provide fiscal stability into the future by looking and maintaining and preserving our reserve accounts, our bond rating, your investment in our infrastructure, and advocating with legislators. I think all of those are spot on for our presentation tonight. As we develop the budgets, starting way back, we have a shared stakeholder group that comes together to work on our budget guidelines. And we also adhere to our philosophy around the budget guidelines and the budget process. Our expectation is that we continue to get better, continue to push ourselves, and do it in a financially responsible manner. We want to keep an eye on the future. And during this whole process, this year twice, we've gone back to budget stakeholders in every area. We've looked at every line of our budget. We've cross-checked budget lines. We've looked at each other's budgets. And we came to where we are this evening, which you'll see in a minute. So with that, I'm going to ask our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Darrin Kenney, to come up and take us through some of the numbers.
Those of you who obviously the board was with us throughout the budget development process, we had a couple of targets to try to meet for tonight, and one of which was to come up with approximately $374,000 in further reductions. This slide shows the major areas in which we accomplished that. On the appropriation or the spending side, affecting benefits, I did some work with the Health Insurance Consortium and the Executive Board looking at the claims history so far this year. We talked about how last year had a very difficult claims experience. This year is trending significantly better. Between that and some changes that are on the horizon potentially for the Affordable Care Act that might save some taxes and fees, we feel confident that that rate will probably reduce somewhere between 0.5% and 1%. So we've reflected that, and you'll see a deeper dive into that in a moment. Salaries and benefits were also changed to reflect some changes in professional development. Some of those costs have been able to be fostered through the grants, various grants that we get, and remove them from the general fund. There will be some changing of the grant applications, et cetera, for that purpose. Throughout the district, athletics and buildings allocations for both what we call discretionary funds, being supplies and materials, et cetera, as well as field trips, will be adjusted. The technology department has reviewed their replacement schedule and basically, for lack of a better way of putting it, slowed down the replacement of technology, and that will affect our BOCES side of the house. On the revenue side, to try to hit that target, we looked at state aid, and we implemented the $50,000 of what's called bullet aid from Senator Funke that we learned about Monday night, as well as last week we received our quarterly report from Monroe County on the sales tax. It's continuing to trend up, so we are adjusting that up commensurately. So what I'm going to do tonight is, I know there's a lot of information here, and I've combined some things so that we can get both things to fit. But I thought it was important to have both the appropriation side and the revenue side on the same page so you can make sure that things balance. Maybe I'm just trying to make my accounting professor proud or something. So we're starting out with the budget that everyone voted on last Tuesday night, the $134 million budget, and you can see the objects of expense as well as the revenue such as state aid. Down towards the bottom, there's the tax cap, and in red, the override portion that was being sought to balance that budget. Then in the beige area are the adjustments that were made. The full day K, if you recall, even though we combined it in the budget, we were very careful to make sure we kept things in separate budget codes. If you look at our budget adoption presentation from a little over a month ago, these numbers tie out exactly to what we showed that the full day K cost would be. So you see those costs coming out on the expenditure side, but you also have to recognize it does reduce the state aid side, as well as the use of reserves, which we are using like a revenue to help support the one-time expenses for facilities and buses. What I call the revote items is what we just got talking about on the previous slide. Salaries and benefits reduced to $175,000, and it totals up to $309,000 on the expenditure side, and it's balanced $309,000 on the revenue side, meaning we could reduce the property tax levy by a little bit more than our target of about $390,000. So carrying that across, the proposed budget, superintendent's budget, is a little over $130 million compared to the $134.2 from last time. The revenues are balanced. and there is not a need for a property tax cap override. The tax cap is 2.72. The estimated property tax levy is 2.70. So taking that last column, if you will, and moving that forward into this chart that you've seen several times in the past, you get an idea of what the change is or the variance in each object of expense. So a little over 1%, or excuse me, almost 2% in salaries, 4.6 on the benefit side, and despite the increase for the health insurance benefits, that's not drastically out of the ballpark of where we've been in previous years. A lot of the help from that has been from the teachers' retirement system. Rates are starting to trend back down. Contractual and tuitions, and I just want to be clear that contractual does not mean collective bargaining agreements for the unions, et cetera. Contractual are for things like maintenance agreements, utilities, things of that nature. Tuitions, we have to pay tuitions to other school districts that our students may go to for certain services, or if we send our students to private schools for special needs, et cetera. And that's been an area of some increase. BOCES is showing a decrease, partially because of the reduction that I just showed you. Some supplies and materials, a decrease. It's important to know the reason it says aided materials. Some of our supplies are directly aided. The state gives us an allocation based on per student, or based on the enrollment, for things like software, library, textbook, and hardware, computer hardware. We're also required to share that money with the private schools that are within our district. The debt service. We have the debt service for our 2012 capital project that was approved in December 2012. That's about $1.9 million. That's for the principal and interest payments on that debt. There's also, you'll see on the revenue side, there's what's called building aid that's coming in about $1.6 million to help offset a portion of that. As time goes on and the various phases of the projects complete, the state aid is going to increase, and the goal is to get those state aid and debt payments as close together as possible, so that in the end, we're not spending any more of the taxpayers' money than we have to. Interfund transfers, the increase there is for transfer into what's called the special aid fund, and that is for our summer program for students with needs. The way the state accounts for that and reimburses, we have to put that money in a separate fund for those students to get those services in the summertime. So as you saw before, and it's about a $4.5 million increase, or 3.63%. Without the debt, it's 2.0%. Same budget, but looking at it in the program services perspective, depending on how people, what positions people have in the district, they like to look at the budget in different ways. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to with this is the two middle columns in white. That also gives you what's known as full-time equivalent for staffing. And our enrollment is projected to increase by 95 students for next year. This budget includes a staffing decrease of 13 full-time equivalent positions. Most of it is a few tenths of a position here and there based on the sectioning and how things worked out based on the enrollments in various buildings. The only other thing I want to draw your attention to here is in the unallocated expenses. There's a lot of things that are included in that. That would include benefits, the debt service, the interfund transfers that we just talked about, and the general liability insurance for the whole district. Moving on to the revenue side, have several years worth of detail. Again, starting out with the property tax cap, unlike what you saw a little over a month ago, there's no yellow box there and red font to show that there's a tax cap override. We are within the tax cap. The state aid has been adjusted for pulling the full day K out. Sales tax has been increased, and so on and so forth. It's important to note on the state aid standpoint, and Michael talked about it earlier, we received only about $74,000 additional aid when the legislature came to an agreement on their state budget. That's about $4 million less than we should be getting as per the law and the per formula. So that leads to the foundation aid, and we've talked about this a lot, but I think with what we've dealt with in the last couple of weeks, it becomes even more evident, not just what the impact is today, but what the impact is into the future. And foundation aid, for those who might not know, that's the basic operating aid or sound basic education aid. It has several different phrases to it that schools are supposed to get. It's supposed to be tied to a formula. We're supposed to know it in 4 years in advance what we're going to get, and schools in general are not getting anywhere near what the formula or the law says. And it still is a political process. This year we didn't know until just a few days before we had to adopt the budget what our state aid package was going to be. And it's very crucial, especially in schools that are highly state aid dependent, to know this information. It's a key factor in our sustainability into the future. It's very difficult with any degree of accuracy to project your revenue picture when state aid is unknown because it's a political process and your tax cap is unknown. In our case, that's about 90% of our budget. We don't know from year to year. I won't belabor this chart too much, but it just shows you over the period of time. The orange line is where our foundation aid should be if it was following the law and based on enrollment, and the blue is what it's actually done. The state has started to try to phase it in, but because we are a high wealth district in their eyes, we don't get much of it. And to put that into perspective, just looking at this year, without naming names, I looked at the data for the area Monroe County school districts, and there's a district not too far from us, one of our neighboring districts. The amount of aid that they received, and they're considered an affluent district as well, was the equivalent of 2.2% of their tax levy. That's quite a bit of relief compared to our 0.2%. The other thing I want to draw your attention to, when we talk about taxes, we also talk about taxes in total. We all pay income taxes, and we fill out our tax return. We put that code on for the school district we live in. And the state uses that data to earmark taxes for your school district. This community pays a lot of money in income taxes. The state data shows that. It's not coming back to this community. It's not coming back to any of the school communities. I won't argue that point. But it's not coming back here at a lower proportion than it is in most areas throughout the state. Now for more of the legalese, this is the property tax report card. And this is part of what the board will be considering tonight with their resolution to approve this. Leanne has had a fun time with the state because legally we have to report this within 24 hours of the board adopting the budget. So we tried today to be able to do that and get things ready for that, and the state kind of acted like, what are you talking about? We don't know how to open it up to let you be able to do that. They're not expecting to do this. So it gives you a little glimpse into the world. But basically what this does is it is taking we are reporting what our tax levy, proposed tax levy will be, and the calculated tax cap. And it backs out what they call the exclusion items. Exclusion items are what we talked about a few moments ago when it looks at the debt service payments minus the building aid, bus purchases minus the transportation aid on those buses. That net effect comes off because that's considered an exclusion of the cap, and that drives the tax levy limit. And then it compares that number to our tax levy proposed limit. When you subtract it, if you have a positive number, you're below the cap or within the cap. If it's a negative number, you're seeking an override. Ours is a positive number, so we are not seeking an override. It also provides data on enrollment projection as well as consumer price index, which is a key factor in the property tax cap calculation. The box down below reports what we have in reserves and fund balance, and the maximum amount of fund balance we can have based on next year's proposed budget, which is a little over $5 million. So this is designed to provide the taxpayers what the state believes is pertinent information for a budget vote. Transitioning from the proposed budget to a contingent budget. This slide's a little different than what we've seen in the past, in the sense that there's not many options there. If this budget does not pass, we must go to a contingent, or what's known as an austerity budget. There's no choice there. There is a lot of legalese to what a contingent budget is, but when you really read it, it's not real good guidance. It makes very clear the Board of Education has the authority to determine what an ordinary contingent item is. Some of the items that have to come out of a contingent budget are equipment purchases, unless you can solidify that they are for health and safety or preserve your facilities. Community use of school facilities could be in jeopardy. And as I said, the Board of Education has some jurisdiction over the rest of it within various guidelines. We have estimated the contingent budget to be $127.5 million. That number could change very slightly depending on how a district gets to that number or the way they implement the changes. That would require a loss of almost $2.6 million in tax levy revenue. So that would be a $2.6 million gap that would need to be made up either through appropriation reductions, finding new revenues, or use of fund balance. This is the slide I always am very hesitant to do, because to calculate the tax rate is about 6 different variables, and at this point in time I only know one of them. But we do the best we can based on the historic data before us. And we are projecting the tax rate, full value tax rate, for this budget to be $25.96 compared to $25.51 for the current year. It's a 45-cent increase, or 1.78%. A $250,000 average assessed home in Pittsford that has basic star. You can see what the costs are there, and the percentage change is the same. Based on how the law reads today on things like the star exemption and the property tax relief credit, it is believed, or I waste word today, everybody should be eligible for that. However, certain people may vary depending on what your incomes are and other factors. And that's a state program, so if you want more information on that, you can find that on the state education website or the comptroller's website. So looking at a historic trend, you can see where our full value tax rate has been. For the current year, the 16-17 year, it actually went down slightly. And we estimated that it was going to go up 25 cents, and actually we were 19 cents off. Nobody's come in to ask to give us a refund. If we were to keep the tax rate the same, 2% increase over time, the orange bar represents that, we've stayed below that line. I've had somebody ask me, why do you care about that? The reason I care about that is there's some school districts that actually market their budget based on the tax rate. And in the old days, you really could do that because you didn't have the tax levy. And if they had a lot of tax-based growth, they could keep the tax rate under control and therefore the tax bill. So if it was back in that period of time, if we stayed on that trend line, the average homeowner would be paying $337 more in their property taxes than what the bill should be in September. Wrapping it up, the key points, the budget increase is 3.6%. The estimated tax levy increase is 2.7, and it's within the cap, so a simple majority will suffice. The estimated tax rate is, I'm rounding it off, 1.8% increase, approximately a $99 increase for the average homeowner in Pittsford. And the contingent budget would require approximately $2.6 million in reductions to get to the $127.5 million contingent budget. The resolution before the board tonight is also up here. Basically what the board is doing is they're adopting as their own the superintendent's spending plan of $130,064,518. In order to support that budget, they're approving a maximum tax levy, or the maximum that we can go out and tax the taxpayers, of $97,875,108, which is 2.7% and below the tax cap. There's also a resolution for the budget to be it further resolved to approve the property tax report card that we just saw. Important dates: on June 12th, there will be a public hearing as part of the typical process, legal process we have to go through with the budget. And then on June 12th is the uniform vote date for schools that have to do a revote or want to do a revote. June 20th, I'll be right here at Barker Road Middle School Gymnasium, as we have in the past. So with that, we'll turn it over for board questions.
I'd like to give the board a chance to respond. If anybody has anything to say, we'll just start at one end of the table. Renee, do you do you want to say anything? Or I know you have just come onto our board, so don't feel any pressure to say anything.
I am okay, thank you.
Irene?
I just wanted to clarify something. If we go to contingent budget, I just want to be sure I'm clear. If we go to contingent, it's $6 million additional or cuts?
From the last budget that was proposed. So
Okay.
we're in this kind of weird area because we don't have a budget right now. So we're basing it based on what the budget was, how it was proposed last time.
Okay, got it. So I just want to talk in general about the feedback we've been getting, and I just want to say I for one have read every one of the emails, looked at all the next doors, looked at all those postings, read them twice, if not 3 times. So I totally understand people's viewpoint and what it is. And I do value kindergarten very much. I just want to say that I started kindergarten, I didn't speak a word of English. I came to kindergarten, and to be that, in general, that was really my most important year. I learned how to speak English, I learned how to read, I learned the alphabet. I had never seen the English alphabet. And so I do completely value kindergarten. But all of this, what we're doing here is, I just cannot see, I totally agree, Mike, with what you've proposed. I cannot see including full-day kindergarten this year. It's very important that we preserve our programs. That is what Pittsford has been successful with, and that's what we've pledged, that we would not cut other programs for full-day kindergarten. So I do agree with what you have proposed, and I do pledge that I will work as hard as I can to make sure that full-day kindergarten is something we can do in the future. I do think advocacy with the state is very important, and so I'm very happy to see and be part of what you've suggested.
Thank you.
I just have a couple questions first. The levy limit is 2.72. When we talk about 2.70, how much in dollars does that 0.2 represent? Just curious. And if it's significant anyway, which it is, why are we leaving that on?
It's about $22,000-$23,000. Part of the reason we try to do that is if something changes with the calculation, or when the comptroller looks at our data at a later date, and if they find that we're over even by a little bit, then we're required to set up a reserve and give it back to taxpayers. It's a lot of,
Okay.
So we just try to keep a little bit of a comfortable margin.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify that the $50,000 in validity that was pledged by Senator Funke was to affect this year's budget plan.
Correct, so we are able to use that money immediately. The $200,000 we are able to use because we can purchase iPads, smart boards, etc. that we would want our kindergartners to have hopefully the following year. And that would be money we would not have to spend against full day care.
Thank you. And just a couple comments. I just want to share kind of the evolution of my thinking. I shared, when we first started talking about full-day kindergarten, I shared thoughts with many of the folks who spoke the other night with respect to, you know, if our students are able to, quote unquote, catch up by the 3rd grade, isn't that reason enough? Do we really need to go out with this huge expense? Well, I'll tell you what, the learning that I've done in that time, conversations particularly with Mrs. Ward, getting to understand our youngsters and how they develop, and the feedback that we've received from our community in emails and in other places have converted me to believe wholeheartedly in the value of kindergarten. It is absolutely not daycare. We understand that, we get that. It is a valuable, enriching experience for our kids that we all want. We would not have included that in our proposal and sought the community override of a tax levy cap if we thought otherwise. So we understand the value of kindergarten, and as Irene said, we will fight tooth and nail with you, with your support, to get the funding necessary as soon as we possibly can to support full-day kindergarten in a future budget. Until then, however, the idea of a contingent budget, and the risk is real, is something that I simply cannot support a plan that puts that at risk, at greater risk. So in sum, I support the redone, recalculated budget, and we'll push forward.
Thanks, Pete. Ted?
Okay, I have a lot of mixed emotions. I fully support where we are at the moment. It's very hard. I know that there's a lot of people that are emotionally attached to full day K. I know that everybody on the board is 100% behind it. I'm 100% behind it. And it's challenging to sit here and not be able to say, hey, we're going to do it. And I think that Mike's presentation was spot on in that from where I'm sitting now, I think that this isn't the end of something, but the beginning of something. And we have to all get together, work together. And I challenge everybody in the community to get involved, to participate. It was surprising to me, especially toward the end, the number of people that didn't feel that they had opportunity to be informed, and the amount of presentations that occurred, the videos that were prepared, the studies that were done, the informational sessions, all these types of things that were out there. I hope that people going forward will avail themselves of those opportunities. I know that I will work hard to get those opportunities out into the community so that people can avail themselves of it. But I hope that people will, when it's there, take advantage of it. The newsletters that come and those types of things, because we have to work together. We have to partner together. And this has been, for me, it's been emotionally draining. I know for everybody involved, it's been emotionally draining. I don't typically get emotional about a lot of these types of things, but this is something that's really mattered. When people get up and talk about the little kiddos, I have 3 kids, it matters. But I am very comfortable with where we're at because I don't think we can take the chance of putting up and ending up with a contingent budget. So I am comfortable with where we are, and I believe in our decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Val?
I agree with everything everyone said up here.
Spoke English in kindergarten.
And I'm frustrated, I'm disappointed, like probably a lot of you in the room, that the original budget did not pass. Particularly since we're a district that's committed to continuous improvement. However, I definitely think that we need to approve the budget as it stands, as Mike presented tonight. If for some reason it goes to contingent, it would harm probably almost every student in this district, including the students coming into kindergarten next year as well. And I think that's important to remember that. Pittsford prides itself on educating the whole child, and all of those pieces work together to make a 21st century graduate. And if you look at our 21st century graduate and 21st century students on our website, all of those extracurricular, the sports, the music, the art, all of those things add up to making those students who can be successful moving on, whether they go to college or military or whatever. So I appreciate all the work everyone has done to work with the legislature, and I would certainly be willing to work with people to move forward and be part of that group that Mike mentioned. I think that we can make a lot of progress now. I know I've been to Albany when they specifically said to us, we've seen letters from other districts on our desk. They remember that, they know that. We had a campaign a couple of years ago asking for some funding again, and we had the GEA restored, so we know that it's possible to do that. But I think if we band together and work toward getting full-day kindergarten, I fully believe it's a possibility in this district. Just not this year. The voters told us, we gave them an opportunity, and they responded that they're not ready for that right now. If we have to go over the tax cap. So I support the budget that Mike's proposed.
I fully support what everyone else has suggested at the table here. One thing that I'd like to say is thank you to all of you for giving us your feedback, making suggestions, emailing us, making the phone calls. We appreciate that. We want to hear your feedback. Unfortunately, in an ideal world, we presented the budget that accommodated all of our students on May 16th, and it was defeated. That was the ideal world for all of us, and unfortunately, we're not there today. As I mentioned on Monday night, I am a former full-day K teacher. I do understand the need to have full-day K, and you have my complete pledge that I will be with you, I will stand beside you, I will do whatever it takes to see that this is implemented in short order. One thing that I'd like to comment on is some of these areas we're talking about making extreme cuts if we were to go to a contingent budget. It would impact our students that are looking beyond high school. I have a graduating senior this year. How would that impact her? In multiple ways. You know, I've had phone conversations with people who say that we have a strong academic performance. It's not all about academics. These kids are provided with scholarships for leadership, for all of the extracurriculars they're involved in. If we were to take that away and remove it, that would impact our entire community, not just one particular area. So I just want to keep that in mind, because certainly as a mother of 4, and I do have a set of twins, and I had a conversation with someone in the community who also has a set of twins, and I understand the predicament of not having a full day K program. You have to look beyond full day K and understand the implications if this were to go to a contingency budget and we had to cut all these other programs that affect a multitude of kids. So with that said, I would just say I fully support where we are today, and you have my 100% commitment that I would like to see full day K implemented in Pittsford Central School District.
I think I pretty much said how I felt the other night, that I'm truly in favor of full day K. I am heartbroken that we had to take it out of the budget. However, I feel that we needed to do so to get under the tax cap and not to significantly cut all other programs, which many people have said that up here tonight. Of course, you have my full commitment that I will be out there trying to advocate. I do believe that it will take a grassroots effort of many, many people to be going to our local legislators, to Albany, and to hopefully make a change in our state aid and our reimbursement. And I'd just like to thank Mike and Darrin's staff and all of our administrators for looking at our budget, making cuts, and really trying. It's been very difficult, and I want to thank all of you here and everyone else we as a board have gotten, I have no idea how many emails, but a lot, and we've tried to answer them all honestly, and some people have written back several times. And again, I would like to say publicly that if anybody wants to call me or any of our board members to have a conversation and to discuss anything else, we are open to that. Our numbers and our email addresses are on the website, so please feel free to do that. Does anybody else have anything else that they want to say?
I would just like to remind folks that despite the fact that we've adjusted our tax levy number to 2.7, we still need, in order to pass this budget, we still need your support. We need you to get to the polls and cast your vote. So I just wanted, I can't go too far in that respect. I probably have tiptoed over the line already, but there it is. So thank you.
And I just wanted to say one more thing. One of the emails, maybe one or two, really was distressful to me, and it said, if we don't have the full day K in there, I'm going to vote no. because I really want full day K, and if it goes to contingent, that's okay. That's very distressful to me, because it's sort of like, if I don't get what I want, then everyone suffers. And that is not a winning situation for anybody. So I really, again, I'm reinforcing what Pete is saying, please come out and vote. It's very important for all our students that we succeed, because that's what Pittsford is all about.
Anyone else? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the 2017-18 proposed budget?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.